You were never the smart one. That's why we paid for Olivia's education, not yours." My father's words landed on the Christmas dinner table like a grenade. The turkey went cold. The cranberry sauce sat untouched. My sister Olivia didn't even try to hide her smirk as she sipped her wine, her Stanford class ring catching the light from the chandelier. What my father didn't know, what none of them knew, was that in exactly 14 hours, my face would be on the cover of Forbes magazine. And the phone calls that followed would go unanswered for the rest of their lives. But let me tell you how I became the daughter they chose to throw away. My name is Margot Sullivan, and I grew up in the shadow of my older sister in a wealthy suburb outside of Boston. From the moment Olivia was born, she was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. She walked early. She talked early. She read before kindergarten and played piano by first grade. I came along 3 years later, and from my first breath, I was a disappointment. I wasn't as quick to learn. I struggled with reading until second grade. Math didn't click until I found my own way to understand it, which wasn't the way my teachers wanted. While Olivia brought home straight A's, I brought home report cards full of C, S and needs improvement comments that made my mother sigh with disappointment. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. My father, Richard Sullivan, was a successful corporate attorney who valued pedigree above everything. Harvard, Yale, Stanford. These weren't just schools to him, they were status symbols, proof of worth, validation of his parenting. When Olivia got accepted to Stanford with a full academic scholarship, he threw her a party that cost more than most people's weddings. When I barely graduated high school with a 2.3 GPA, he sat me down in his study and delivered the verdict that would define the next decade of my life. "Margot, I'm not going to waste money on your college education. You're not built for academics. Your sister has a future. You'll figure something out. Maybe find a nice husband who can take care of you." My mother, Linda, nodded from the doorway. She had never once defended me against my father's assessments. To her, I was simply the mistake that came after the masterpiece, the rough draft you throw away once you've created perfection. I was 18 years old, standing in my father's study, listening to him tell me that I was worthless. And something inside me cracked, not broke, but cracked. Like a seed splitting open in the dark soil, ready to grow into something nobody expected. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll figure something out." I walked out of that house with a backpack and $340 that I had saved from babysitting jobs. I didn't look back. The first 2 years were brutal. I moved to Austin, Texas, as far from Boston's judgment as I could afford to go, and took every job I could find. Waitressing. Retail. Night shifts at a warehouse. I slept on a mattress on the floor of a studio apartment that cost $600 a month and smelled like mold. But I had something my family never gave me credit for: I could see patterns that others missed. I could look at a broken system and understand exactly how to fix it. I wasn't book smart, I was something else entirely. I was problem smart. While working at a small restaurant, I noticed that the owner was losing money on inventory waste. I spent 3 nights redesigning his ordering system using nothing but a notebook and common sense. Within a month, he'd cut food waste by 40% and increased profit margins by 15%. He paid me a $500 bonus and told everyone he knew about the girl who fixed his restaurant. Word spread. A local bakery owner asked for help. Then a dry cleaning chain. Then a small logistics company that was bleeding money. Each time, I saw what nobody else could see: the inefficiencies, the redundancies, the simple changes that could transform a struggling business into a profitable one. By the time I was 23, I had saved enough to take a single community college course in business administration. Not because I needed the credential, but because I wanted to understand the formal language of what I was already doing instinctively. That's where I met my future business partner, Damon Reeves. Damon was a software engineer who had dropped out of UT Austin to build apps. He was brilliant with code but hopeless with business. I was brilliant with business but couldn't write a line of code to save my life. Together, we were unstoppable. "You see things differently than anyone I've ever met," he told me one night as we sketched out business plans on napkins at a Denny's. "Your brain doesn't work like everyone else's. That's not a weakness, Margot. That's a superpower." It was the first time anyone had ever called my different way of thinking a strength instead of a defect. We started Streamline Solutions in a garage with $12,000 in combined savings. Our product was simple: software that helped small businesses optimize their operations using the same principles I had been applying manually for years. Automated inventory management, predictive scheduling, waste reduction algorithms. The first year, we made $47,000 in revenue. By year 5, we had expanded into enterprise solutions. Fortune 500 companies were calling. We had 89 employees, offices in Austin and Denver, and annual revenue approaching $18 million. And not once, not a single time in those 5 years, did I tell my family what I was building. I kept my distance deliberately. I changed my phone number. I used my middle name, Elise, for all business purposes. Margot Sullivan disappeared, and Elise Sullivan, founder and CEO of Streamline Solutions, emerged in her place. Occasionally, I checked in on my family through social media. Olivia had graduated from Stanford Law, just as everyone expected. She joined a prestigious firm in San Francisco, married a surgeon named Preston, and had 2 children with names that sounded like luxury brands. My parents posted about her constantly, every promotion, every vacation, every achievement documented and celebrated. I was never mentioned. Not once. It was as if I had never existed at all. That should have hurt more than it did. But somewhere along the way, I had stopped needing their validation. I had built something real, something meaningful, something that helped thousands of businesses and employed dozens of people. I didn't need the Sullivans to tell me I was worthy. I knew it. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't waiting. Waiting for the moment when the truth would come out. Waiting for the day when my father would have to swallow every word he ever said about me. That day came on Christmas Eve, 7 years after I left home. I don't know why I agreed to go back. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I wanted to see their faces one more time before my life changed forever. Maybe I was just tired of carrying the weight of their rejection and needed to set it down in the place where I first picked it up. Whatever the reason, I drove my 8-year-old Honda Civic into my parents' circular driveway on December 24th. I wore jeans and a simple sweater, no designer labels, no jewelry, nothing that would hint at the $4.2 million I had in my personal bank account. I wanted them to see the person they remembered. The disappointment. The failure. The daughter who wasn't worth investing in. Olivia answered the door in a cashmere dress that probably cost more than my first month's rent in Austin. Her smile was thin, performative. "Margot, you actually came." She looked me up and down, taking in my plain clothes with barely concealed contempt. "Well, come in." Mom made her usual spread. The house was exactly as I remembered, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers and photographs of Olivia's achievements lining the walls. I searched for a single picture of myself and found none. Not one. It was as though I had been erased from the family history entirely. My mother hugged me stiffly. "It's been so long, Margot. You look, well." The pause before "well" said everything. My father didn't bother with pleasantries. "Still driving that old car, I see. I hope you've at least found stable employment by now." "I'm doing fine, Dad." "Fine isn't success, Margot. Fine is survival." He gestured toward Olivia's husband, Preston, who was examining a bottle of wine like it was a surgical patient. Preston just made chief of surgery. Youngest in the hospital's history. That's success. Dinner was a parade of Olivia's accomplishments. The cases she had won. The partners who praised her. The vacation home in Napa they were considering purchasing. Every story was a reminder of what I wasn't, what I had never been, what my family had decided I could never become. I stayed quiet, eating my turkey, nodding at appropriate moments, giving nothing away. Then, as dessert was being served, my father turned to me with that familiar look of disappointment. "Margot, I've been meaning to ask. What exactly are you doing with your life these days? Still waitressing, or have you moved up to something marginally better?" Olivia snorted into her wine glass. "I run a small business," I said carefully. "Operations consulting." "Operations consulting," my father repeated, his tone dripping with condescension. "I'm sure that's very quaint. But let's be honest, Margot. You were never the smart one. That's why we paid for Olivia's education, not yours. Some people are meant to lead, and some people are meant to follow. There's no shame in knowing your place." Olivia smirked across the table, her Stanford ring glinting in the candlelight. I looked at my father, really looked at him, and felt something unexpected. Not anger. Not hurt. Just peace. Because I knew something he didn't. Something none of them knew. "You're right, Dad," I said quietly. "I was never the smart one. Not by your definition, anyway." I stood up, placed my napkin on the table, and walked toward the door. "Margot, where are you going?" my mother called. "We haven't finished dessert." "I have an early morning," I said. "Merry Christmas, everyone." I drove back to my hotel room, ordered room service, and watched the clock tick toward midnight. In 12 hours, the Forbes embargo would lift. In 12 hours, the world would know that Streamline Solutions had been acquired by Microsoft for $23 million. In 12 hours, my face would be on the cover of one of the most prestigious business magazines in the world. In 12 hours, my father would learn exactly how wrong he had been about everything. I slept better that night than I had in years. The article went live at 6 a.m. on Christmas morning. The dropout who built a $23 million empire, how Elise Sullivan revolutionized small business operations and caught Microsoft's attention. The cover photo was from the acquisition signing, me shaking hands with Microsoft's VP of Business Solutions, surrounded by my team, looking exactly like what I was, a successful entrepreneur who had built something extraordinary from nothing. The article told my whole story. The difficult childhood. The father who refused to pay for my education. The sister who was always held up as the standard I could never meet. The years of struggle. The community college class where I met Damon. The garage where Streamline was born. It didn't take long for the phone calls to start. My mother called first, at 7:23 a.m. I watched her name flash on my screen and let it go to voicemail. Margot, sweetheart, it's Mom. I just saw. I can't believe. Why didn't you tell us? Call me back. Please. My father called at 7:41 a.m. His voicemail was shorter. Margot. We need to talk. Call me immediately. Olivia's call came at 8:15 a.m. I could hear the barely contained hysteria in her voice. Margot, this is insane. Forbes? Microsoft? $23 million? You sat at our dinner table last night and said nothing? This is... I can't even. Just call me, okay? We should talk. I didn't call any of them back. Instead, I flew back to Austin, where Damon and the team were celebrating with champagne at the office. I hugged the people who had believed in me, the employees who had worked overtime to make Streamline successful, the early clients who had taken a chance on a small startup, the investors who had seen potential when my own family saw nothing. These were my people. This was my family now. Over the following weeks, my biological family's attempts to reconnect became increasingly desperate. My mother sent a 7-page handwritten letter explaining that they had always believed in me, they just had a different way of showing it. She asked if I could help Olivia's husband invest in some exciting tech opportunities. My father sent a formal email, through his law firm's letterhead, no less, requesting a meeting to discuss potential business synergies and family reconciliation. He mentioned that he had always known I had hidden potential and that he was proud of what I had accomplished despite the challenges. As if the challenges hadn't come directly from him. Olivia was the most aggressive. She called repeatedly, left voicemails, sent texts, even tracked down my business email and sent a long message about how we should let bygones be bygones and support each other as sisters. She mentioned that her firm was looking to expand into tech law and that my connections could be valuable. I responded to none of them. 3 months after the acquisition, my father showed up at my office in Austin. He walked into the lobby unannounced, wearing his best suit, clearly expecting to be ushered into my presence like visiting royalty. My receptionist, Janelle, called up to my office. Miss Sullivan, there's a Richard Sullivan here to see you. He says he's your father. I looked out my window at the Austin skyline, the city that had given me a chance when my family had given me nothing, and felt perfectly calm. Tell him I'm unavailable. And Janelle? If he comes back, call security. According to Janelle, my father stood in that lobby for 45 minutes, insisting that I would see him, that this was all a misunderstanding, that family was more important than any business disagreement. Finally, security escorted him out. I watched from my window as he stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the building that bore my company's name. For one moment, I thought I saw something on his face that might have been regret. But it was probably just the Texas sun in his eyes. That was 2 years ago. Since then, I've used my acquisition payout to start a foundation that provides scholarships and mentorship to students who don't fit the traditional academic mold. Kids who learn differently. Kids whose families tell them they're not smart enough. Kids who are dismissed as failures before they've had a chance to discover their own kind of brilliance. Last year, we funded 147 scholarships. This year, we're on track to fund 300. I named it the Second Chance Foundation. Because that's what I gave myself when my family refused to, a second chance to prove that intelligence comes in many forms. And that the people who count you out are often the ones who understand you least. Olivia's marriage fell apart last spring. Preston had an affair with a surgical resident, and the divorce was messy and public. Her law firm quietly pushed her out after a series of lost cases. The last I heard, she was working at a small practice in suburban Boston, a far cry from the partnership track she had once seemed destined for. My parents' marriage has suffered too. Without Olivia's success to brag about, they've had to confront the emptiness of a life built on appearances. My father retired early, health reasons, according to mutual acquaintances, and my mother has thrown herself into charity work with a desperation that suggests she's trying to fill a void. Do I feel sorry for them? Sometimes. They're still my family, despite everything. But feeling sorry for someone isn't the same as inviting them back into your life. Some doors close for a reason. Last month, I received a handwritten letter from my father. Not a legal document. Not a formal request. Just a letter, written on plain paper, in handwriting that seemed shakier than I remembered. Margot, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I failed you as a father. I measured your worth by standards that had nothing to do with who you really were. I told you that you weren't smart when the truth is that you were smarter than all of us, smart enough to succeed without any of our help, smart enough to build something remarkable out of nothing, smart enough to know when to walk away from people who didn't deserve you. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. I don't expect you to respond. I just needed you to know. I read that letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and closed it. Maybe someday I'll respond. Maybe I won't. The beauty of building your own life is that you get to make your own choices, on your own timeline, for your own reasons. What I know for certain is this: I was never the smart one by their definition. I couldn't memorize textbooks or ace standardized tests or impress admissions committees with perfect scores. But I could see what others couldn't see. I could build what others couldn't build. I could succeed in ways that nobody, least of all my own family, ever expected. My father was right about one thing: I was never the smart one. I was something better. I was the determined one. The resilient one. The one who turned her family's rejection into rocket fuel and launched herself into a life they never imagined possible. And when the phone calls started that Christmas morning, when the family who had counted me out suddenly wanted back in, I did exactly what they had taught me to do. I knew my place. At the top. Alone. Exactly where I chose to be.